Hi guys, now it's been 2 days and I'm going to check the hydration box to see if it's ready for me to pin, and if it is, then I will proceed with pinning immediately rather than waiting a third day. Let's have a look. As you can see, the hydration box, all of that snow has melted into water, and let's have a look. Sometimes the lid will have some condensation on it, so I will make sure that I don't let any of those water droplets beat off on the specimens. So the specimens look like they are on very moist toilet paper. So here we have what I'm going to be doing is squeezing the thorax with my fingers to see if the wings are moving. Now, if you notice, both the wings are moving. That's a very clear indication that the specimen is hydrated. At this point I take a pair of forceps and I move it in between these wings, and I'm going to be spreading the costal margin to see if I have full mobility. And it looks like I do. The next thing I do is with my two fingers I grab the costal margin, and with my left hand I move the specimen's hind wings all the way down so that I can see the full range of motion that's available to me with all the wings. So this specimen is clearly ready for me to mount. The true test for this now is for me to check and see how well the large moths are doing. So I'm going to pick up one of the large moths here, and I'm squeezing the thorax, and there's absolutely no movement whatsoever in the wings. So this tells me that while the specimen has been exposed sufficiently to the moisture, it's just not penetrating the muscles. So at this point I'm going to inject it with hot water, and that's going to allow me to spread the specimen. This is a really delicate process of injecting with hot water. I'm going to just check these moths on this right hand side to see if that's the same situation. So again, I'm going to squeeze it, and it's starting to move. So I have mobility here on this nude Aurelia Dione from Cameroon. So that's good news. This thick-bodied moth has no movement whatsoever. So it's interesting how the density of some specimens will allow for the moisture to go in, while other densities prevent it entirely. So I have enough information for me to proceed with actually pinning today. Let me show you how I inject the body with hot water. Here I've got a syringe. I'm going to take the needle off, and I'm going to extract some of the hot water that I've got in this Tupperware container. I'm going to take the specimen, hold it by its thorax, and I'm going to inject at the back where the thorax and the abdomen connect. I'm going to be injecting such that the water goes downwards into the thorax, and I'm not expecting much of the water to come out as of yet because it's filling the empty cavity inside, so that the muscle tissues are getting full direct access to all that hot water. When I know that the cavity is filled with water, you notice that not a single drop came out. That means that there's a lot of volume that this specimen can actually hold. So I'm going to do another round. The first 10 cc's are actually in there. Not a single drop has come out. So here we go again. Now we notice some of the water droplets coming out. That's great. So now that tells me that I can inject the rest of the amount, and now I'm going to test it to see if I can actually open up its wings. I made a little crackling sound. That's not a big deal. Doesn't mean that the specimen is breaking. I want to see if I can move the wings. Not quite. So my final test is here. I have some mobility, but not total. So I'm going to put some of the specimen into the water let the water soak into there and put it back. I will do the same thing for the next Thysania agrippina, injecting it as well. Now at this point, if you found that the antennae are not hydrated properly enough, that's when I would just do a slight dip into the water, like that. So I'm going to put the entire thorax and abdomen into the water, and now back into the hydration box. And here's the last one. Now the last one was the one that had direct contact with the toilet paper. Let's see if there's mobility. Oh, a lot of mobility. A lot more. So I'm going to take some water. Now sometimes the specimen will rotate on the needle. It's not in far enough. So now it is in far enough, and the water is now being injected in. There you have it. So we're going to be mounting Thysania agrippina first. You can see the wings are completely mobile. I'm going to take a number 7 pin. I'm holding the thorax by my index finger and my thumb. With my right hand, I'm going to be using my thumb and my middle finger to hold the sides of the pin, and the top of the pin I'll be pressing down with my pointer finger. And I'm going to be placing the pin right into the center of the thorax, down into the middle, press down, and then I'm going to be placing it in the groove approximately 10 centimeters from the top. That will allow me to spread the wings and lift them up. Now, one of the things that I'm doing right here is that I'm making sure that the pin is perpendicular. I've got a whole series of tracing paper here. Now this is regular tracing paper. I do not use wax paper because wax paper actually removes the scales of the wings. The tracing paper is extremely light. I've got a number of colored head pins here, and I'm going to be securing the top of the tracing paper on one side, and what I do on the left side, I do on the right side. So you can see that the wingspan is bigger than the tracing paper, so we're going to be covering all of the wings to make sure that nothing curls up. So at this point, now that I have it here, I'm going to be using my forceps to move the wings up. To make it easier, I move the board to the side, and I'm going to do the top side first. So I'm going to take my forceps, and if you notice that they are very, very flat, I go to the top of the costal margin and I pull up. Now I pull up to the point where it's perpendicular. There's a line here with the bottom of the forewing looking perpendicular to the groove. Now I'm going to take the costal margin of the hind wing and I'm going to push this up. And as I'm doing that, I'm bringing down the tracing paper. I'm pulling it nice and snugly so that the tracing paper does not allow the wings to droop. And I'm going to start placing the pins. Now if you'll notice, I'm placing the pins at the top of the costal margin first, securing it in place before I actually move my fingers. Now this pin right here is just a placeholder. What's really important is that we get the right forewing secured nicely. Now I will worry about this wing at the end. What I do on the right forewing, I'm now going to do on the left forewing. I'm grabbing the costal margin and I'm pulling it up. Now you heard a little crack there. That's normal. It's not a big crack. The specimen is still intact. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to just draw an imaginary visual line between the bottom of the right forewing and the bottom of the left forewing, and I can see that it's perpendicular. Another way to do it is to look at the distance between the forewing to the right side at the top and make sure that it's equidistant on the left side. That's another very effective way. Now, if you'll notice that the pins go into the wood really easily, and that's because I'm actually using quite a bit of force to push it in. I mean, this is pine wood. There are a lot of insect supply houses that use balsa wood. It's a much softer wood, but pine wood is also a soft wood. I make it a point that I always use used boards. I don't like brand new boards. Now at this point, I have to check to see if it looks symmetrical. You can see here, it's not symmetrical. The V shape on the right hand side is actually larger than on the left side. So we're going to be moving the left side down just slightly to make sure that it's symmetrical. We do that by just removing this pin and slightly lifting this, releasing the tension so that the wing comes down ever so slightly. I moved it down about 1 millimeter. And then what I do is I test to see if this V and this is the same. There we go. Now that we have that in place, I fasten it. I fasten it here. Now, I want to make sure that the body is actually in the middle. If you'll notice, the body is veering off to the left. I want to make sure that it goes right in the center so that it looks balanced. There. Now here comes the hard part. I'm going to fasten the antenna down. I'm going to create a little teepee. So I put one smaller pin down, and then I move the pin over, second pin over, and I do the same thing just to get the antenna in place. And to prevent the tips of the antenna from coming up, I do a little tiny teepee on this side as well. What I do on the right side, I do on the left side now. Again, I put a pin down. These pins are much sharper than the colored head pins, so I don't have to use a lot of force to get the pins into the wood. Now, this is such a large butterfly, moth, that it's unlikely that I'll be able to get 3 on this board. But there's still room for me to get another one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another large agrippina, and we're going to mount it on the same spreading board. So this one is now finished. It's completely symmetrical. The symmetry is in place. So again, I'm going to be pressing the thorax. You'll see a leg just fell off. That's not a big deal. We can always fasten that later on if that's necessary. Now here, there are little crackles that happen. That's natural because it's been dried for such a long time in this position. And here we go. Large wingspan. Gonna get a pin, number 7 pin. We're gonna do the same thing. And I'm going to place it into the groove. Now, if you'll notice that when I place it into the groove, I'm putting it pretty close to the bottom. That allows the forewings to go to the top, and they're not going to be interfering with the top specimen. So, again, when I push down on the wings, I'm pushing down on the costal margin and nowhere else. So I'm going to fasten a pin on the bottom of the tracing paper to make sure that it stays. And then I'm going to move it to the side, like this. And now you can see what I'm going to be doing. At this point, I don't need to actually lift up this pin and the tracing paper. I have so much room hanging over that I can actually start moving the wing up. So I'm going to do so. So I'm going to get it to 90 degrees with my left hand. I'm going to press down on the costal margin, release my grip on the tweezers, and then I'm going to start fastening it on the costal margin, just at the border of the costal margin and the tracing paper. I'm not actually penetrating the wings. That's really important to understand. I don't want any pinholes. So with my hand, I'm going to gently press down on the tracing paper, not too hard because I don't want any color to come off. And then I'm going to release the bottom pin, and now I'm going to put the hind wing up. By pulling the hind wing up, it's going to allow it to look symmetrical. I tighten the tension, and then I get the pin back in place. And I put a series of pins around to make sure that that hind wing does not move. Here we have it. So that's the right side. Now what we do on the right, we're going to do on the left. I get my tweezers underneath, and then I'm going to pull up. I've released the pin. I'm going to move the hind wing up just slightly. There we have it. And now I'm going to place a pin, and we're going to check the symmetry. I'm going to hold it up. It's really important, guys. Is it symmetrical? Now, it's very difficult to tell because that body is not straight. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to straighten that body. It's looking pretty straight, pretty equal. I'm happy with it. Only one minor adjustment. I'm going to be moving this left hind wing up 0.5 millimeter. Pulling the tension. And now placing the final pins. And now this is done. You can see how quickly, in real time, it's taken to actually pin these two Thysania agrippina. Just going to quickly do the antenna, just showing it to you again. I'm not going to describe it in detail because it's already been done. You can see how I'm just straightening it out. You notice everywhere I place my finger, the wings are not there, so I'm not leaving marks behind or scratching or hurting the wings. It's really important that the antennae are hydrated properly so that you can actually do what it is that I'm doing without any risk of breaking these extremely fragile pieces. Now to finish this off, I'm going to be taking a piece of tracing paper and putting it on this side and one on this side. Really important, guys. And the reason it's super important is because when the butterfly is drying, it's going to want to curl up. So I want to prevent it from curling up, so I'm going to fasten all the ends of the wings down so that it will dry flat. Now I don't need to go all the way down, just need to pin around the wings. Now this is optional. Now, if you hydrate the specimen without a humid box and you just do it with hot water, you won't need to do this step at all, because the wing is not moist and it's not going to curl up. It's only when you put the entire specimen in the hydration box do you actually need to do this step. Now because these are such gigantic specimens, I am going to leave it on the spreading board here for minimum 72 hours. So here you have it, Thysania, agrippina, 2 of them that have been mounted. Next I'm going to be showing how to mount some of the butterflies. There is no question that mounting butterflies is difficult. It's probably one of the most challenging crafts that I've encountered. So many things can go wrong. What's important is to be patient. You have to try and try and try. Every butterfly is different. All the muscles operate differently for different species. You'll have to account for different things in order to get the result that you want. My biggest advice is make sure the specimens are fully hydrated, and make sure you have total peace in your mind when you're doing this, because if you're agitated, if you are stressed out, it's sure to create an undesirable outcome. I've had the privilege of being able to pin, I would say, over 150,000 butterflies in my lifetime. That's a lot of hours. That's well over 10,000 hours that I've spent learning how to do this. What you've seen me do is the culmination of all that practice. I don't have a damage rate that I see beginners have. When I've taught people how to do this, it can be expected that for the first 100 butterflies that you try, maybe 50 to 75 of them are broken as a result of you mishandling it. If you can get it down to 1 or 2 breakages per 100, that's the ideal outcome. Thank you for watching. If you've learned something, if you want to give any feedback, if you have questions, please leave them in the comments below. I welcome any of your feedback, and of course, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.